For almost 200 years, armies from Europe launched a series of campaigns thousands of miles away from home, fighting over one of the most important cities on earth. Jerusalem. Kings abandoned their kingdoms. Knights left their families. Ordinary people crossed mountains, rivers, and deserts, believing they were answering a call from God. Others were searching for land, wealth, power, adventure, or glory. Thousands would die. Cities would be attacked. And in one of the strangest twists in medieval history, Christian crusaders would eventually attack another Christian city. So how did the Crusades begin? Why did they continue for so long? And how did they finally end? This is the story of the Crusades. To understand the Crusades, we have to go back to the 11th century. Jerusalem was one of the most important religious cities in the world. For Christians, it was sacred because of its connection to the life, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus. For Muslims, Jerusalem was also deeply important because of its connection to the Prophet Muhammad and the sacred sites on the Temple Mount. And for Jews, the city had been sacred for thousands of years. Jerusalem wasn't simply another piece of territory. It was a city carrying enormous religious and political significance. Meanwhile, the Byzantine Empire was under increasing pressure from the expanding Seljuk Turks. The Byzantine Emperor appealed to Western European Christians for military assistance. Then, in 1095, Pope Urban II made a dramatic call for Christians to travel east and fight. His message spread rapidly across Europe. People began taking vows and sewing crosses onto their clothing. This symbol would become closely associated with the men and women who joined the movement. But they did not all have the same motivations. Some genuinely believed they were fighting for their faith. Others hoped to gain land or wealth. Some nobles saw an opportunity to increase their political influence. And some ordinary people believed the journey could bring spiritual rewards. Whatever their reasons, thousands began marching toward the Holy Land. And if you enjoy history told as a story rather than a boring textbook, subscribe to the channel. More stories like this are coming. The journey was brutal. Many crusaders died before reaching their destination. They faced hunger, disease, exhaustion, unfamiliar climates, and enemy armies. But the expedition continued. The Crusaders captured important cities along the way and eventually reached Jerusalem. Then came the moment they had been fighting for. In 1099, after a difficult siege, the Crusaders captured Jerusalem. The victory was followed by a massacre of many of the city's inhabitants. The Crusaders established several states in the region, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem. For the Crusaders, it was an extraordinary victory. But there was a problem. They were thousands of kilometers from much of their support in Europe and surrounded by powerful Muslim rulers. Capturing Jerusalem had been difficult. Keeping it would be even harder. Over the following decades, Muslim leaders gradually began organizing against the Crusader states. And eventually, one man would become the greatest threat they had ever faced. His name was Saladin. Saladin became one of the most powerful Muslim rulers of the medieval world. He controlled Egypt and Syria and worked to unite Muslim forces against the Crusader states. He understood that defeating the Crusaders would require more than individual battles. He needed to strengthen his position and bring his enemies together. Then, in 1187, the two sides met at the Battle of Hattin. The result was devastating for the Crusaders. Their army suffered a crushing defeat. Thousands of soldiers were killed or captured. The defeat left the Crusader states dangerously exposed, and Saladin moved toward Jerusalem. After almost 90 years under Crusader rule, the city surrendered. The city that had been so difficult for the Crusaders to capture in 1099 was now back under Muslim control. The news sent shockwaves through Europe, and Europe responded with another major expedition. The Third Crusade had begun. One of its most famous leaders was the English king Richard the Lionheart. Richard was a formidable military commander. He defeated Saladin's forces in several battles and recaptured important coastal cities. But there was one thing Richard could not achieve. He could not retake Jerusalem. Eventually, Richard and Saladin reached an agreement. Jerusalem would remain under Muslim control, but Christian pilgrims would be allowed to visit the city. Richard returned to Europe, and for a while, the fighting quietened. But the Crusades were far from finished. The Fourth Crusade began with another goal: reach the Holy Land and fight the Muslims. But things went badly wrong. The Crusaders needed ships to transport their army, and financial problems soon became a major issue. Political disputes became involved, and eventually, the Crusaders turned toward Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. Then, in 1204, something almost unbelievable happened. The Crusaders attacked the city. Constantinople was one of the greatest Christian cities in the world. Yet Christian Crusaders stormed it. The city was looted. Treasures were stolen. Buildings were destroyed. And the Byzantine Empire was severely weakened. Think about how far the Crusaders had come from their original goal. They had set out to fight Muslims in the Holy Land. Instead, they had attacked fellow Christians. The Fourth Crusade showed just how complicated the Crusades had become. Religion remained important, but politics, money, trade, territory, and personal ambition were now deeply connected to the wars. And the damage done to Constantinople would weaken the Byzantine Empire for generations. There would be more Crusades after this. Some attempted to recover territory in the Holy Land. Others targeted Egypt or North Africa. Some Crusades were even fought within Europe against groups considered enemies of the Church. But the Crusader states in the Middle East continued to weaken. Muslim powers gradually captured their remaining territories. One stronghold after another fell. The Crusaders could no longer maintain their position. Finally, in 1291, the major Crusader city of Acre was captured. The remaining Crusaders were driven out of the region. After almost 2 centuries of crusading campaigns, the Great Crusader project in the Holy Land had effectively ended, and Jerusalem remained under Muslim control. So, what were the Crusades really about? The answer isn't simply religion. Religion was at the heart of the movement. But politics, land, wealth, trade, power, fear, and ambition all played major roles. The Crusades caused enormous destruction and suffering. They changed kingdoms. They weakened empires. They transformed relationships between Europe and the Middle East. And their consequences continued to be felt long after the final Crusader states disappeared. Perhaps the biggest lesson is that history is rarely as simple as good versus evil. The people who joined the Crusades had different beliefs, motivations, and goals. Some thought they were serving God. Others wanted power. Some wanted wealth. And some simply followed the people around them. What began in 1095 as a call to fight for the Holy Land eventually became one of the longest and most complicated conflicts of the medieval world. The Crusades began with a call to capture Jerusalem. They ended without permanently achieving that goal. But their impact would last for centuries. And that is the history of the Crusades. If you enjoyed this journey through history, subscribe to the channel. There are countless stories from the past that sound like fiction, but actually happened. Thank you.